Welcome to Feature Fridays. My name is Guy Bartram, Director of Product Marketing for our cloud providers at VMware. And today joined by Jay. Welcome back, Jay. How you doing?
Hello, Guy. I'm doing well. Hello, everyone. My name is Jay. I'm the Senior Technical Product Marketing Manager with the CIBG team, and I handle a couple of products like VCD, NSX, ALB, and the V2T product for VCD, which we'll talk about today.
Yeah, you handle just a few products, right? I mean, it's not too much for you, I hope.
Very few. I have a bigger bucket.
Yeah. All right, Jay. Well, listen, thank you very much for coming on today. Today we're going to talk about NSX migration tool from V to T, the newest release 1.4.2, which I think came out. Was it earlier in
May 9th.
In May? I think.
Yeah, May 9th. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right, Jay. So, I mean, this is a pretty important tool for cloud providers looking to start their migration from V to T, or even doing their V to T migration now and have been waiting for kind of the latest release with the latest functionality. So let's dive straight into it, man. What's new?
Awesome.
Well, let's start with what is the tool and what does it do?
Sure, absolutely. That makes sense because it's good to give a recap of what this tool is all about, because there's been a big gap before the previous demonstration or video. So we'll keep the agenda very crisp and tight. So we'll first quickly look at the evolution and comparison of the different versions of NSX, V and T. And from a cloud provider's perspective, why should you migrate to NSX, VMware NSX T, and how it helps you monetize your business and what all services can you offer? And then we'll talk about the tool itself, what it does, how it does, and then we'll look at what's new feature in this release, and then a couple of engagements and call to action. All right.
Okay. Cool.
So to begin with, we all know NSX was basically an introduction. NSX came to VMware in the year 2012, where we bought in Niagara, and it always was kind of co-integrated with the vSphere, wherein NSX which was called NSX for vSphere.
That's right. Yeah.
So with that, you could basically connect to your public cloud or your data center's private cloud, but through vCenter server. So basically, NSX for vSphere only had one endpoint, which was vCenter server, and through VC, whatever we support, whatever endpoints we support, NSX would basically cater to your basic or a little high advanced level of networking requirements like routing and switching. So that was obviously a limitation, wherein if you have other requirements, wherein if you want to utilize the same network layer for other SDDCs or hyperscalers, then this was a roadblocker. So what VMware did was we separated the NSX piece from vSphere and introduced a new product altogether called NSX T Data Center, now called VMware NSX. And basically this NSX T, right? I'll call it NSX T for this video, so it's clear to the audience, because we are comparing V and T, right? So NSX T basically is now the only supported version, and version which VMware recommends the cloud providers and other partners to use. Why? Because it supports your virtual machines, containers. We can directly configure and install NSXT on your bare metal. And then, of course, it provides your L2 to L7 complete network stack functionality, right? So that's the most important thing which you need, wherein just not switching and routing, you need advanced functionality like advanced firewall, you need some application level security, IDS, IPS, all those stuff. So NSXT is much capable of configuring these features, and of course it's like I mentioned, it can function cross hypervisors, and it can basically support almost everything VMware can support and integrate with its products.
That's a really good point. I mean, for our enterprise customers and corporate customers out there who have multi-cloud today, right? So they have infrastructure running in hyperscale environments, infrastructure running on-prem, possibly infrastructure in a cloud provider. This provides a common control plane across all of it. So this is going to save you significant time and effort in configuring your security and networking architecture going forward. And you've got to standardize on this stuff, because it's so important to have the correct security model in
Right.
place across any endpoint. Otherwise, you're really exposed with different silos and different
Exactly.
technologies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially since the last 2, 3 years, it's all kind of a work from remote situation, and security is
Yeah.
the most crucial factor. That's where NSX-T plays in a key role and provides various level of security at the VM level, container level, bare metal level, and whatnot. So that's
Yeah.
the capability of this NSX-T as a product. And of course the countless features it brings with itself when we talk about NSX-T as a solution by itself.
Yeah.
So quick comparison between V and T. Yes, like as mentioned, NSX for vSphere only supports vSphere, whereas NSX-T is independent network and security platform. With NSX-V, we can have standard use cases, but with the NSX-T, we can have advanced use cases, like I mentioned about the advanced firewalling, your application level firewalling, your IDS, IPS, and whatnot. So you can have advanced use cases configured and set up in your environment with NSX-T. And with NSX for vSphere, we can only protect and network your virtual machines, but with NSX-T, you can protect and network your VM containers, your bare metal, public clouds, whatnot. And I'm sure all of you by now already know NSX-V is also out of technical support, which was this year in January, which means there would be no new features, no support, no bug fixes available for NSX for V. But for NSX-T, of course, it's the product we support and has a future and good roadmap. So you'll have hundreds of new features coming in and whatnot. So that's one of the critical thing where NSX-V does not have any support or technical guidance, but T will continue to have support, technical guidance, new releases, bug fixes, and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, there's one real point I want to emphasize here, right? So cloud providers who are running V today essentially are running unsupported.
Yeah.
And that poses one problem in terms of, can you manage your SLAs on an unsupported product?
Yeah.
I think secondly, it's really important to recognize that we, VMware, are developing, Cloud Director, latest releases and stuff like that. And we're not developing anymore with NSX-V.
Correct.
So you are missing out on all of the technologies and capabilities that your customers hopefully want or don't know they need yet, and you could sell to them. So there's like two really good reasons why you've got to very seriously consider, how to upgrade and get on the case really quickly.
True. I second your point about the providers not knowing what their customer wants, because they do not know or unaware of what NSX-T can offer to you with VCD. So you have many more platforms open for you, many more services open where we can offer each of the features as a service and basically bring in more customers, monetize your business and whatnot. So that's a very strong point you mentioned, Guy.
Yeah, I think they have to kind of think about it as needs to be some sort of real sales enablement and portfolio development for the partners, because a lot of partners are saying, oh, well, I'm not going to upgrade to T because I've got to buy potentially new hardware. I've got to do upgrades. It's going to take time. But the upside is you can significantly expand your portfolio, which is perhaps it's a different conversation that you haven't had with your sales teams or with your customers on this new functionality. So do explore what you could do from a portfolio perspective, and you'll see the benefits.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at the product life cycle, as we have discussed, right, NSX-V is basically out of support and technical guidance, and NSX-T is the new feature and the only supported networking layer from an SDDC perspective from within VMware. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why NSX-T? A couple of features I have highlighted on the screen, and for more details, you can read my blog. The link is mentioned on the screen. So of course, with NSX-T, right, you can basically scale out networking. What does it mean? Basically, like vSphere, NSX-V, right, is limited to vSphere, but with NSX-T, you can scale out to any hyperscaler, public cloud, any virtual machines, any containers, right, all with the same platform, same layer. Like I mentioned, single point of control pane, and you can have multiple multiple endpoints configured and taken care from a networking perspective. So it's easy to scale out with NSX-T. And of course, the best thing is that it brings best-in-class security features built into the solution. So you do not have to basically deploy other products or third-party products to get certain features. So this solution itself is capable of covering your LT to L7 features, and then of course it gives you all the advanced functionalities like IDS, IPS, your NSX intelligence, and whatnot. So every of these features is built into this solution, which is available to you once you upgrade to NSX-T, and also, I mean, you have the full stack networking for modern distribution application. Like I said, right? If you have a complex configuration where you need firewalling, distributed routing, NATing, and whatnot, right? So you can have all of these configured within the same solution, and then of course you can segregate your traffic, your design based on how you want to configure with this solution. And lastly, one of the more important point is that you can basically secure or enable automation with this tool, and then leverage the feature for your network or your environment configuration. And of course, the best part about this tool is that it is very simple to use, simple to understand. Yes, if you are a heavy user of NSX-V, there are different jargons you have to use in NSX-T, but the logic, the concepts are same. And of course, with additional functionality and operations, you can perform with the NSX-T. These are just some of the points, but like I mentioned, read the blog. You'll have plenty of more points to understand and know really why NSX-T. This guy.
Yeah, I was just to say, there's two kind of points I want to zoom in here, which I think are very cool features. One is, everyone's suffering with cyber attacks and ransomware. Doing microsegmented VMs prevents the lateral threat, the lateral movement of ransomware type infections.
Right.
And enterprises and customers are suffering at the moment with huge volumes of data growth. That's just a fact, right? And data is growing exponentially fast, and they struggle to keep up with security as a output of that. The NSX-T VCD integration exposes one really cool feature, which I think service providers should look at, and that's dynamic firewalling based on things like tagging and names. You can tell the customer that they can go and deploy whatever they want. The firewall is going to be inherited by whatever tags are used in your VM images or anything, something like that, and that then enables them to establish, but also critically maintain a zero trust security posture. And I think that's what, if I was a provider, I would be positioning my capability as enterprise grade, zero trust, secure cloud. And that's really something that's very, very easy to do these days.
True. Absolutely. Good point mentioned, Guy. Okay. So what Guy was mentioning, right? That the cloud providers may not know or do not know about what all potential services they can offer if they are using NSX-T with the VMware Cloud Director environment, or in general NSX-T. First thing, they can offer firewall as a service. Basically, it's a part of all microsegmentation. You can have web application firewall. You can have IDS, IPS as a service. You can offer IAM and NDR, right? So these are some of the services which fall under the security category. And if it's a multi-cloud business which you run, you can obviously offer a disaster recovery as a service, backup and recovery, workload mobility, VPN, load balancer, edge gateway. So these are the services which you can actually add to your portfolio as an offering, and then the customers can obviously leverage these, and then accordingly they can use as per the requirement. And of course, like I mentioned, NSX-T fully supports the container world and the microservices. So of course, if you want to do networking at that level as well, NSX-T is the answer for your complete end-to-end solution to add these as an offering. And of course, in the end, with the offering, you can monetize your business, and then of course grow your business, grow your customers, and provide more services, and be up to date in the market with having a healthy competition and providing everything what a customer is looking for.
Hey Jay, we often hear from service providers that
Mhm.
they're not going to upgrade to T because there's no SSL VPN anymore. What's the kind of the answer to that? I know we do IPsec VPN and that is much more secure,
Mhm.
but it's also a bit more heavyweight than an application level VPN. What is the kind of recommendation to service providers who are doing SSL today, apart from use IPsec?
That's actually a smaller limitation we still have with this tool, where if you're using SSL VPN, of course, then it's all basically your manual migration, wherein you have to have that SSL VPN SSL thing configured on the destination site, and then I mean IPsec is the only solution, to be honest. But in other words, you may have to kind of if I mean it's difficult to say, but then you have to have a downtime where your data is secured. Then you do a lift and shift, and then things like that. But yeah, IPsec is the only thing. But with that, yes, there are limited
The
functionality as of now, but it's still possible through the IPsec VPN
Yeah, and
running
you can
option.
use open source SSL VPNs, right? There's nothing to stop you.
No,
And
no, absolutely
most,
yes.
yeah, I mean, most application environments use open source
Yeah,
VPNs in
yeah,
any
yeah,
case.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
if a customer still wants to use SSL, by all means, use an open source. And yeah, I'm sorry, that's within your control, Mr. Customer,
Yeah,
nothing to do with
yeah,
us.
yeah. Nothing to do with
Um,
us, actually. Yeah,
but we can give you an IPsec VPN. And to be clear, that
yeah.
NSXT is never going to do SSL VPN.
It will not. Yes.
Yes, so that's kind of something just to bear in mind.
I mean, it's not that we don't want to do it. It's a solutions limitation itself, wherein
Yeah.
not that as a cloud provider or a VCD offering we do not do it. It's the limitation of the solution, which is, I think, for whatever good reasons, is
Yeah, it is.
because the control of that is at the customer level, like you mentioned. So we'll have lesser uh, control on what's happening in once we have those such environment to be monitored, secured, and migrated.
Yeah.
All right. So okay, now you have to be very clear about the migration scenario. You would basically, depending on the environment, what you have. One is you would have your vSphere environment where you're running NSX T or NSX-V and want to migrate to T. In that case, you would use something called migration coordinator tool, which is built into NSX-T and not enabled by default. That's used when you want to migrate a non-VCD environment, right? But this demonstration, this feature Fridays is all about environment which is running VCD. So if your environment is running VCD and is backed currently by NSX-V, and if you have to migrate to NSX-T, in that case, we would use something called the migration tool for VCD. And that's a pure focus about this demonstration and this video, okay? So we'll purely talk about the tool which is already designed and built for migrating the networking of VCD from V to T. It's basically an in parallel migration where you have to have your NSXT environment set up parallelly before we can do the migration from V to T. How we'll do, all we'll check in the coming slides. So our focus is purely on this tool for this Feature Friday video. Okay, so it's nothing new, but we all understand that when we do any kind of migration, right, we have certain design principles to follow, correct? And I mean, depending on the size of your environment, your configuration, right, most of us would prefer if the migration process, or at least certain part of the migration process, can be automated. Yes, this tool does that. It automates most of the migration for you upon certain starting basic configurations you have to do within some files, which I'll talk about. So this tool is purely, you can say it's an automated tool, which will help you migrate your VCD environment backed by NSX-V to NSX-T. And this tool also basically helps you go at a very granular level where you can migrate a org VDC at an org VDC level. Say, like, say, for example, if you have one organization, or if you have 20 organization VDCs under that organization, you do have the capability of just migrating one org VDC if you need. So that's the level where we can go and then migrate the workload from that org VDC only.
Yeah.
And let's make it very clear. Yes, there would be a little downtime involved when you do a migration, but that's very minimal because the process is so automated. You'll have like a shutdown, migrate, and power on. So that basic downtime is supposed to happen. And the best part about this tool is that it is a non-destructive tool, meaning in case you have done the migration and things do not go fine, you have the option to roll back. And that's the cool feature we have since this tool was developed. In case things don't work fine and stuff like that, you can happily roll back and go back to your original setting and configuration and run your business, fix the problem, and you can redo the migration. So this tool is basically designed around these design principles, which I believe is a very strong tool and strong design principles, wherein most of us look for automation, granular level, less downtime, and a rollback option if things do not go fine for some reasons.
Yeah, that's a good, really good point. The non-destructive is very important.
Yeah.
You know, you do your migration, you will have some downtime for your migration, but then you should also consider that you would want to do some post-migration testing, which may also provide some downtime before you then hit the destruct button in the script to actually remove the original configurations.
Yeah. So that's basically cleanup process, which I'll talk about briefly.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this tool as an offering, right? First of all, you have to download this tool from the website, which I will show the link to the download in the later slide, and then deploy it on one of the Linux virtual machine or any supported virtual machine, which is in the same network as your VCD, your NSX, your vSphere. It should be in the same network. Now, what all topologies it support, you have to understand this very clearly. This tool is capable of migrating one or multiple org VTCs together at the same time within the same organization. If I'm not wrong, the limit per organization org VDC is 16. So at any given point of time, you can configure 16 org VDC at the same time within the same organization. This tool is capable of parallel migration. What do you mean by parallel migration? It means that parallelly you can run the tool separately with separate configuration files to migrate organization, meaning I can parallelly migrate organization 1 and organization 2, and that is supported. And if your setup has one or more multiple edge gateways configured, this tool is smart enough to understand that, give you some recommendations based on the assessment, which we'll talk about. And then it supports that migration, that level of topologies as well. And this tool is very, very much capable of migrating your direct network, routed network, which could also be distributed and isolated org VDC network. We have a lot of enhancements made through the versions, and in this some of the enhancements made in this version as well. So all type of org VDC network migration is supported. And one very important thing to understand that this tool only supports the integrated authentication. What do you mean by that? Meaning, I have my VCD environment. I have to integrate NSX T into it. Let's say load balancer into it and vSphere into it, right? So whatever configuration I have done within the VCD environment are the only destination endpoint. Let's say your NSX T or NSX ALB or vSphere is what this tool would support. You cannot have any other vCenter server which is not known to VCD, any other NSX T which is not known to VCD be used. So whichever is integrated within VCD are the only endpoint solutions which the tool will support.
Yep. Okay.
Simple design of how the migration would look before and after. So if you look at the diagram right in the left-hand side, this is let's say your current environment where it is backed by NSX-V, and it's basically having a couple of V apps, and the V app is talking to one V app is talking to your isolated network. The other one is talking to your distributed network, which is routed to your external network and talking to your internet. Okay. Now, if you migrate this workload to NSX T, how it would look like? NSX T, like I said, has a different naming convention and a slightly different concept. So it is important that you understand how NSX-T functions, what are the objects, what are the correlation of objects between V and T, and then obviously it will make your understanding easy to know what we talk about. Okay, so once the migration happens to NSX-T, the same workload obviously will be a part of the respective org VDC. And if you look here in NSX-T, we have the concept of T1 and T0. Basically, T1 is your east-west traffic and T0 is your north-south traffic. So the post-migration design of your environment would look like your VApp, which is routed to your router network, will point to your T1, which is your segment. And the segment obviously will be pointed to your T0, which is your external network, provider network, basically. So that's how it would look like. Like I said, this is an automated tool. Once you have configured the initial settings within the tool, it will do the job for you. What all job, I will talk about it in some time. So basically what this tool does, right? It basically does a bridging for every org VDC network you have in the environment. That's the key thing, where the network migration happens through bridging. And if in case you are migrating your workload across vCenter, in that case, we use the XVMotion technology, wherein it will migrate your virtual machines across vCenter. However, this tool can still be used to migrate your NSX-V load to NSX-T environment within the same vCenter server or within the same VCD environment, provided your PVDCs, right, that must be backed by NSX-T. So obviously your current environment will have a PVDC backed by NSX-V. So you need to have another PVDC which is backed by NSX-T, and you can migrate the workload from PVDC backed by NSX-V to PVDC backed by NSX-T. Now these two PVDCs can be in the same vCenter server or VCD. That is very much supported. So if you look here, it says in this example, we have two vCenter servers and you have a single VCD, meaning that VCD is integrated with both vCenter A and vCenter B. And in that case, your PVDC, which is this one, is in vCenter A, and this PVDC is in vCenter B, meaning it will do an L2 bridging for every org VDC network and XVMotion in this scenario. Now we'll talk about the tool itself and what all functions it supports or it allows you to perform. First, this tool allows you to do an auto assessment. I'll talk about each of it in one slide in the coming slides. Then this tool is all about a user input file, which you feed in with the data of your environment, your existing environment, and accordingly, it will do a lot of things for you like pre-check. And then obviously it will do some assessments for you, give you results, and then I'll let you know whether the configuration you have configured and the checklist which you have to follow before the migration is all up to the mark or not. Yeah. There's something called breakpoints. I'll talk about that in detail in breakpoints slide. Basically, breakpoints is an enhancement we have made from a couple of previous versions, wherein you can now perform the migration in segregation or based on services. Previously, what used to happen, once you run the migration, it will do all the migration at the same time. For example, network migration, service migration, workload migration, and everything. But now you can break them into separate checkpoints and then migrate and then perform them individually. And of course, we have the option to do an automated rollback. Should your migration fail for some reason, you have the option to do a rollback. And of course, once you are satisfied after the migration, you have done your testing and everything, you have the option to do a cleanup, which is again an automated process. Now, the good thing about this tool is that, let's say, for example, you're running an assessment or a pre-check, for example, and it failed at certain stage. So what happens? You get an error message, and then you have to go fix the message, fix the error. Once you run the command again, the good point is it will resume from where the pre-check, for example, failed, and it will continue from there. So it will not start from the starting. So that's the advantage of this tool. It knows where it stopped and when it has to continue, and from which point it has to continue, basically. Yeah. Okay. Now we'll talk about each function a little in detail. This assessment, right, was not available to you at your initial releases, but it's available to you with the with various releases. So basically, what it does, so we have to basically run if so there's a file called assessment report file, which is a template. You fill in the template by providing your VCD details, NSX details. So what it'll do some assessment based on its logic, okay, and provide you reports. As of today, it provides you 4 reports. One is your gateway report, one is your load balancer report, one is your summary report, and one is your detailed summary report. Okay, there are a couple of enhancements in this release for this report, which I'll talk about in the what's new section. But these 4 report files you get when you run the assessment. Now, what do you get in the assessment? For example, so the first 2, right, is very clear. The first one gives you all the gateway details. Second one gives you all the load balancer details. The more important reports are the summary report and the detailed report. In the summary report, basically this will give you the output stating that which all features in the environment you have configured is not supported. Either could be the migration tools limitation or NSX T limitation, or it is something which you have configured using a third party, for example, right? So it will let you know exactly what feature you have in your environment may not be able to be migrated and how many VMs are impacted for that workload or for that configuration. That's one thing. In the detailed report, it will give you similar kind of information, but it will also allow you to it will also tell you whether within the organization, right, if you have multiple org VDCs and if you have shared network between those org VDCs, the tool is now capable of letting you know whether which all org VDCs within the organizations have shared network, and it will recommend that you migrate them together. It was not possible before, but now it's possible. So this is one of the enhancements made in this version. So this summary report and detailed reports are really very detailed for you to know whether the migration will be successful or there's some tweaks you have to perform before the migration can take place. The summary report will also clearly tell you at the bottom of the report that certain features is not supported by this migration tool, which is anyway public, and it's very well documented that certain features we do not support with this migration tool.
Okay.
Now, all the magic happens in this file. It's a user input file. It's basically a template wherein you have to key in a lot of details about your VCD, NSX, vSphere, NSX T, which org VDC, which network, which load balancer, which IP pool, which certificates, blah, blah, blah. Everything is something you feed into this file. It's a one-time task. Thereafter, it will do the task for you automatically once you run the command using this file. Now, when you run this file with the respective commands, right, for the first time, you have to pitch in the password of VCD, NSXT, NSX-ALB, etc. Thereafter, by default, this tool will create a password file for you, which can be used afterwards, which can be used later on as an argument without you having to type the password every time. So you can pass the password file as an argument to use the password for the respective solutions. Okay, so this is the first thing where we do a pre-check. Sorry, we do an assessment. It will give a report. And then we have to create the user file, put in the details. Now, once I have fed in the details, right, I don't have to migrate straightforward. I don't have to migrate immediately. What I can do is, as a part of tools functionality, I can do a pre-check. Now, what is a pre-check? Pre-check will basically look at all the details you have provided in the user input file. All right. And just for you to know that before you start the migration, you have to perform a certain tasks beforehand. Like, for example, you have to create your edge gateways, you have to create a bridging, you have to create a dummy port group, blah, blah, blah. So what pre-check will do is it will check whether all of those configurations and the checklist which you have configured, which has to be configured before the migration, is right or not. If something is missing or something is misconfigured, it will let you know in the output stating that, okay, this thing is wrong, go fix it. So once the pre-check gives you a green signal is when you can actually plan for migration. So in that way, you know that, okay, whatever configuration I have, whatever checklist I have configured is right and up to the mark.
Yep, got it.
Now, coming to breakpoints, this is what I was talking about. Basically, I can call it migration in modules. Previously, let's say, for example, you do this topology, bridging, services, move VApp was all in a single task. We have broken down them into separate tasks. It's not a feature of this release, but it is supported since some previous version onwards. Now, what is topology? Okay, if you look at the boxes here, I have mentioned topology breakpoint is mandatory, rest all are optional. Now, after I have done assessment, user input file, pre-check, now I have to do the actual migration, right? So these 4 are part of your actual migration, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of one single task, assume it's a 4 different tasks. Now, why have you broken up this? Because based on the configuration you have in your environment, right? Could be that you do not have any edge gateway services configured, right? Why would you want to run the services task then? You do not want to, right? You can skip it. Or let's say if you do not have any, I mean, mostly you would run in practical scenario bridging, but let's say if you do not want to run bridging check or bridging what do you call this function, you can skip it. So that's the advantage of having a breakpoint where you can skip what you do not want and is not applicable for your environment. Now, as a part of breakpoint or as a part of the actual migration, the first breakpoint is topology, which is mandatory. Why? I'll tell you. Once you run this topology, once you run the command with the topology argument, what it will do is it will look at your NSX-V environment, your new NSX T environment, which you have set up, and it will basically copy the metadata of this environment and place it in NSX T. So why you need this is because in case you have to roll back, it is this metadata which VCD uses or this tool uses to roll back.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very crucial task which you cannot skip and is mandatory to run the topology breakpoint to basically create the metadata across environment. Just to show you how the metadata looks like, it's something like this. So if you look at I'm at the org VDC level, and if you look at, there's a tab called metadata. By default, if you go and look here, it's empty. But after you have run that topology command, it will create such data for you, which is basically used by the tool for migration and for rollback if needed.
Yeah.
Second breakpoint is bridging. Third is services. Fourth is move VApp. This is the breakpoint where the actual virtual machines are moved using the move API.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So this is all about breakpoint, and the command basically is this, what you see here. So either you can skip a breakpoint or you can execute a breakpoint, depending on its importance. So topology is important. Rest all can be optional. Sometimes what happens, right? You want to perform the topology check right now and migrate after a month or 2 months or something like that, right? So in that way, this helps you analyze your environment, do a pre-check, create the metadata, and then maybe once you have the downtime plan, you can do the migration accordingly. So that could be one of the scenarios where you can actually break the migration into modularity. Now, coming to rollback and cleanup, yes, you can roll back if your migration fails, and it basically rollback will use the metadata, which is basically created by the topology breakpoint. And then if you want, you can do a rollback when needed. Cleanup, after you have done all the testing on the destination site, once your workload, network, services are all migrated, you're happy with the results, you can do a cleanup. Now, what is cleanup? Cleanup is basically 2 things over here. Once you have the new objects on the destination site, right, it'll have always a keyword with the object called V2T. So let's say if I have a network, let's say org VDC network, router network, it'll have org VDC network or router network V2T, right? So it'll basically remove that V2T word from the objects and clean up your objects from the NSX-V environment. So basically remove the V2T keywords from the object which are migrated, could be your networking object, service object, or the virtual machine itself, and do a cleanup on your NSX-V side. That's the part of the cleanup job, task of the cleanup job.
Jay, just thinking out loud here, if you're using the migration function to do parallel migrations of multiple org VDCs, Could you potentially run into space problems as you're before a cleanup operation?
Yes, absolutely. You can run into space issues. So that's when you build your okay. So basically, when you're doing parallel org VDC migration, of course, you know, right, what's the current usage in your current environment, which is backed by vSphere NSX-V. Obviously, you have to do those planning and then have your equal or more amount of space in the destination. But if you run out into an issue wherein the migration has failed because of space issue, the only option is then you do a rollback. And then fix the problem, remigrate. So you do not have to do a topology, no bridging, no service. Straight away you can do a move VApp breakpoint this thing functionality.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so you can come back into the process at the right point, but the tool won't give you the visibility of space if you're going to be doing parallel migrations, right?
Space, I have not seen it letting you know that whether you have. It'll just check all the configuration. It'll check your pre-created object checklist and stuff, but not space.
Okay, that's fine. It's just something to be aware of then if you're going to start doing. I mean, parallel migrations is, you know, it's going to be obviously if multiple parallel migrations start to fail, then it's going to be more complex for you to kind of troubleshoot and fix them before you.
So one thing to understand, there could be a parallel migration of org VDC within the organization or parallel organization migration. So be very careful on planning what you do at what time. So we support parallel for OVDCs and org both. Okay, so now finally we are into the actual thing about what's new in the migration tool version 1.4.2. So in this release, right, we have introduced around about 8 to 9 features. I mean, some are enhancements, some are new features. So first, let's look at what are new features which we support in this release. The first thing we now support is the support for IP spaces. We all know IP space is basically a IP management where you can basically manage your IP in a better way. So if you have that configured, the tool understands that configuration and it will help you migrate the IP spaces to NSX T environment. The second one is the support for exclusion or negated distributed firewall rule. Basically, let's say, for example, if you have a couple of firewall rules which are not in use but are still available, right? The tool will understand those and also help you migrate those negated distributed firewall rules to your NSX T environment. The third is support for multiple ports in distributed firewall rules. So if your distributed firewall has multi-port configuration, the migration tool now understands that and will help you migrate the distributed firewall rules, which has multi-port configuration, and accordingly migrate the data to your destination NSX T environment.
Okay.
The other one is support for migration of VMs without NIC. So cool, right? So I can still migrate those virtual machines and then move them to my NSX T environment, but doesn't make sense because it has no networking configured because it has no NIC, but the tool will do it for you. And the last new feature is support for SSL pass-through in load balancer. Basically, we all know, right? So what happens is basically if your pass-through is enabled, right, in the application profile, it will. I mean, it's basically if SSL pass-through is enabled, then HTTPS protocol will be changed to TCP, and if it's HTTPS health monitors also is enabled in your SSL pass-through, it will change to TCP health monitor. So basically, that's the support we now support from this release.
Can you just re-explain, because I kind of missed it, the negated distributed firewall rules? So is it assessing which ones are actually viable or in use, or
so say for example, I have certain distributed firewall rules configured, but they're not in use, right? So the tool now understands that, okay, since this is configured in this edge gateway and this edge gateway has to be migrated to the destination, basically the configuration. Usually what used to happen, all the firewall rules which are basically attached to your objects would be migrated, but now there are certain rules not in use. Those exclusion negated distributed firewall rules will also be configuration will also be migrated to your NSX T side.
Okay, so it will actually migrate the not in use
the
Firewall rules.
configuration.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
I see. So
configuration,
last time before that, it was just taking the ones that were in use, was
which
it?
were in use only, correct?
Okay. All right. That's cool. Yeah.
Okay, so these are some of the enhancements made in the existing features. The first one is about the direct network. This is actually a very good enhancement. So what used to happen previously, right? In NSX for vSphere, right, I used to have my direct network backed by a port group, which is talking to internet, correct?
Mhm.
In NSX-T, until the previous version, what used to happen, if I'm migrating my direct network from V to T, even in when the network is in the T side, it'll point to the same port group in vCenter and talk to internet. But now what we do is we allow the direct network migration from V to T, where in T side, it can now point to a segment, which is T1, and point to a T0, which will talk to internet. So that's the enhancement we have made, wherein now the direct network can be pointed to your T1 segment, basically. And then that segment will have a outbound traffic to via T0 to the internet. So
I
that's
would have
the
thought that.
enhancement we have made.
Yeah. I would have thought that's a pretty high in demand one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And now we have something improvised in the assessment report, like I mentioned, right? While I was talking about the assessment report, we now have a check where the assessment engine is now capable of understanding which all org VDCs within the organization has shared network.
Mhm.
It'll recommend that, okay, boss, these networks are talking to these org VDCs. It is recommended that you migrate them together.
Yeah.
So in the assessment report, you'll have a new column called org VDCs to be migrated together. And it will tell you how many org VDCs and which all org VDCs. It recommends that you migrate them together so that the network topology and the network sharing is intact and it is replicated in the NSX-T environment. So it will now tell you that which all networks or which all OVDCs are sharing the same network.
Yeah. Otherwise, you have
And
to keep the bridging there, right? And
oh,
that's
otherwise it'll
okay.
be difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have bridging for each org
Yeah.
VDC. If you do them separately, and that'll increase your task, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
And from a catalog migration perspective, it's basically catalog. Okay, we have enhanced certain catalog migration for the cleanup process. So the first one is YAML flag timeout for VApp migration. If you, basically, if you use this flag, right, it'll now, how do I say? Mm, It'll now, previously what used to happen, right? If I'm doing a cleanup and if in case there was a delay in the cleanup process, the VApp cleanup used to timeout. But now with this flag, I can keep that timeout active and let the cleanup process complete the process completely and automatically. If not, it was a manual task for the users to go and clean certain objects. So that's one
Okay.
enhancement we have done.
Yeah.
VApp template migration enhanced. So it basically means that now, previously what used to happen if I'm migrating a VApp template from my V to T, and on the T side, if the template was not having any storage policy assigned, right? So what it'll do now is it'll now by default assign the default storage policy on the destination side to the VApp template. That's one capability we have done. And previously we could not migrate or when we do it after the cleanup, right? When the migration used to happen, we could not, we didn't support the owner's information to be migrated or the permission, but now we support that. So when the actual move is happening, and the share permission, the owner information is also transferred to your T side with the tool. And if you want to know more about the previous features, please look at the user guide, which is available on the docs.vmware.com portal. So yes, we do have certain unsupported features. So that's all listed in the link provided there. Before doing any migration, always the best practice is look at the interoperability with VCD migration tool version, NSX-T, vSphere and whatnot. And to download the tool itself, you have to go to basically the VMware Cloud download portal and then click on drivers and tools, and you would find the tool available over there.
Awesome.
And what's new for you guys? Awesome. So, all right, I know that I've spoken about, Guy has explained some good value points, and I've spoken about how the tool functions, how easy it is, trust me. But still, if you think you need to understand more and you still have doubts about how the tool functions, you want more in-depth knowledge. So what we have is we have some webinar series coming soon for you, which is free. So in this series, basically, all the experts will basically talk about basics of NSX-V, basics of NSX T, how talk about basic topology, advanced topology, talk about this tool more in detail and how the migration should happen, best practices in detail. It's a 7 to 8 session series where you can register yourself and then attend the webinar series for free. If you have not got the invite yet, please talk to your BDMs or to your sales representative. They are aware about this webinar, and then you can get registered for this webinar as soon as possible. So this is one offering. And even then, after the webinar, you think, oh no, my environment is very complex, and then you need assistance. In that case, you can engage our PSO offerings. They have a couple of offerings, as you see on the screen, where you have essential offering, which is a 3 weeks program, standard, advanced, enterprise, and some add-ons. So you can contact our PSO team if you still need their assistance. If you're looking for a low budget assistance, we do have a third-party engagement, the CalSoft. Basically you can connect with them and then talk to them, and then they can also help you assist in migration, planning, and designing. To know about these PSO and CalSoft, talk to your BDM, your salesperson, and they'll give you more details. Lastly, hard to say, but the migration tool 1.4.2 is the last release from VMware side, which means that you would not see any more enhancement to this. So in case you're thinking that if I have the next feature available with more functionality, do not do that. So if you have to migrate, this is the only tool available with you. And it is a highly recommended thing from VMware that you migrate your environment from V to T for, of course, many good reasons, what we have mentioned. So take advantage of these sessions and the offerings, and then obviously plan your migration and being up to date, have your environment up to date.
And I guess the other thing to point out is obviously there's a Slack channel. Most of our providers are kind of aware of it, but there is a NSX-V to T channel within our public Slack environment. Yeah. So if you've got any questions about the tool or the migration in general, just post it there, and that's watched pretty much 24/7 by our engineers and sales and support. So I think the webinar series is going to be fantastic. Keep an eye out on social media. We'll definitely be pushing out, advertising on that. It's like Jay said, right? It's free. It's specifically designed for you to take advantage of the tool and NSX T and understand what NSX T can bring to you. So it's not just a technical deep dive. It's also a bit of a portfolio kind of refresh like we did at the start. And Jay, I know, thank you. You've done a lot of content for that, so appreciate that as well.
And I'll be one of the presenters in a couple of sessions as well.
Excellent. Look forward to it, mate. Look forward to it. Listen, Jay, thank you very much for today. 142, like you said, this is the last version of the tool. There isn't any more versions of the tool coming. It pretty much does everything everyone needs now. So there's no, additional development from us needed. Use the resources we've given you. Get on the webinar series. Look at PSO if you definitely need it, or look at a third party. Talk to your account rep, talk to your VMware guys on Slack. And, there's so many routes to really trying to help you here move from V to T as much as possible. And all remains to say is a big thank you, Jay.
Cheers. Yep. My pleasure, guys. Take care.
All right. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.